entrepreneurial nation, fiscal consolidation, job creation. So from the team, we here at Asasi Radio saw a few things. So building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation, which is number one, and then fiscal consolidation, and then job creation. So these are three things that you can see clearly from the theme of the budget. We also discovered that, or not discovered, we saw from the budget that there are about 7 thematic areas in the entire budget that was read. And so we felt that let's identify somebody in the House who is seized with authority by way of leadership in the House, and also sat there in Parliament while the budget was being read, and find out from him, first of all, his immediate impressions when the budget was delivered, his immediate thoughts about what has been presented to the House, and then also to find out from the House going forward what are some of the things that are going to unfold. So, and then again, some concerns had come up since the budget was read on Wednesday till the Friday when we had the interview with Mr. Markin. So we thought that we could raise those concerns also with him and get some
in advance of the retreat as well.
Retreat. Now the retreat actually is supposed to have ended, I think, yesterday. Now tomorrow, Parliament will begin the on-the-floor debate about the budget. So, of course, this interview comes ahead of that process, which is starting tomorrow. And so that's essentially what motivated us to go to Mr. Markin. And if we ask why, he is the deputy majority leader. He's been in Parliament for a while. I think this should be his fourth term in the House. And so what it means is that he has a lot of parliamentary experience. In fact, if you don't have, it will be difficult for you to serve in that position as deputy leader of government business and majority leader in the House. So he was obviously the go-to person on this matter. There were other issues that have surrounded him as a person. We decided not to go on that route. We decided that we should focus
the budget,
just on the budget
and what's coming out of it.
So
some of the main
we are not going to have anything outside
of the budget
in this discussion. It's just focused purely on the budget and his thoughts on the budget.
All right. So we'll be hearing that interview in about 4 or 5 minutes' time. It's Wilberforce talking to Honourable Alexander Afenyo-Markin, Deputy Majority Leader and Member of Parliament for Futu. And after that, then when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what was said and some of the highlight points that come out of that. That'll be after that particular interview that's coming up very shortly. Before then, however, very quickly, quick reminder to you out there that CBG Dome branch has relocated to a new office on the main Dome Market Road opposite the Heavy Do building to be able, so that it can serve you better. Heavy Do building, all right? Visit our new plush office and access up to 400,000 Ghana cedis in personal loans if you have the facilities available to you. Our personal loan package is available to individuals for the purchase of urgent personal needs. Come to CBG if you are an SME looking to expand your business or bring in new products. Our export finance solutions are also available at competitive interest rates. Alternatively, bank on the go with CBG. I just called the number, that's *924# and get digi with it. For further inquiries, contact 0302 216 000, 0302 216 000. Follow us on FB, Twitter, and Instagram. And T&Cs do apply. That's terms and conditions, okay? CBG, we stand with you.
Yes, and a cheery message for you about some more goodies, this time from the Goil Go Club. So Goil has some good news for you. Goil is rewarding its prepaying Go Card customers with a 2 peso discount on every litre of fuel that you buy. You can also enjoy discount on lubricants on sale at Goil stations nationwide. So elevate your goodness by joining the Goil Go Club today, which allows you to enjoy up to a 3 peso per litre discount on fuel, amazing discounts on your purchases of lubricants, free life insurance cover provided by My Life Insurance, the ability to accrue and contribute loyalty points to a social group which will be used to fund an approved corporate social responsibility project. And above all, you get to enjoy exclusive Goyle branded campaign gifts. So go on, join the Go Club by visiting any Goyle filling station or office, or visit the Goyle website, which is registration.goyle.com.gh, or any of Goyle's social media platforms. So individuals, corporates, family and social groups, go on, join the Go Club now. Goyle, good energy. Ya yedim.
My walk through the valley of the shadow of darkness and me with her. Now cause I'm foolish and shame I say musu yewa. No mama send me na a shot to one side.
Asasi Radio.
Because I'm reading na shot to ayo. Since the woman no be a shoko. We keep the fire every day can't quench you. About your fans and no sawdust. As I'm a mecha can't go do nyami benia. Don't change the love. You may be a fipa and I'm a guy. I'm one penpo, paying failure. I'm one penpo, paying fail. I'm on a dogo, be more, be more, honest, guy, a fiba. Call I'm one penpo, paying failure. Call I'm one. Shayanda, yes, Suda.
So exactly 20 minutes to the top of the hour. So let's just listen to what our man, Wilberforce, and the Honourable Alexander Afenyo-Markin, Deputy Majority Leader and Member of Parliament for Futu, had to discuss around the 2022 budget statement. And we'll find out. And then when we come back, we'll talk some more. Why are you waving at me? I don't understand. Why are you waving at me? Why? I like waving. Waving crowd. So after the interview, when we come back, we'll have an in-house discussion about what they discussed.
So thank you very much for tuning into Asasi Radio 99.5 megahertz. Today, we have the Deputy Majority Leader in Ghana's Parliament, Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Markin, speaking with us essentially on Budget 2022. And it's exciting that we have the Deputy Majority Leader because he brings new perspectives to the debate that has been going on since the Finance Minister presented the budget. So let me quickly welcome Honorable Afenyo-Markin. A very good day to you, sir.
Good day. And how have you been, I should ask?
You left your junior brother, but today I found you.
I'm sure job challenges are, tearing us apart. I mean, you are in the media. I'm now in front line, receiving all the punches.
A lot of punches.
Yeah, you have to.
Yes, but I think that you are taking the punches quite well. So it's been nearly 11 months since you assumed office at Deputy Majority Leader. How have you been in that position?
Well, it's a learning process. You have a leader who has been there for many years with a lot of experience. So your duty is to tap into it and work with the team. Leadership in the house is about teamwork. If the five of you cannot work together, your backbenchers would get exposed, or the whole team will be exposed, because the arsenals will be thrown here and there. So it's been quite an interesting experience, and we hope to be learning more. But it's been good.
It's good to hear that it's been good. So just a few days ago, the second-term government of President Akufo-Addo presented its second budget to Parliament. It's the budget statement and economic policy for the year 2022. As you sat in the chamber and the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, spoke to the House nearly an hour and 45 minutes, what was going through your head throughout the process?
A sense of optimism. I felt strongly about the fact that the government, in all of these difficulties, has come out with proactive steps to address the basic concerns of Ghanaians. My joy was the fact that prior to the reading of the budget, there were a lot of engagement with the various stakeholders. And the input of stakeholders were considered in coming up with a final document. There are two things creating problems for us as a country. One, job creation. Two, revenue. Now, government is always working in between the deep blue sea and the devil. If you go for a loan, the nation will say, no, too much debt, unsustainable. If you tax, no, you are burdening us. So it's not an easy work to be in government. Then you come to the employment side. You have a lot of our people graduating from the universities, the polytechnics, and they all come to the job market looking for jobs. You realize that the majority of them are looking for public sector jobs. And that is where the problem is. Government can choose to employ more of them. But the more government employs, the lesser the funds available for other development. Because government will end up spending all of its revenue to pay salaries. So there are two things to be done. One, to invest in the private sector to create the jobs. Two, to provide the necessary incentives that would encourage people to find space in the private sector. If you follow the budget, really, government acted with all sincerity. Government admitted the challenges that COVID-19 has brought. And the fact that in all of these steps were being taken to manage the situation. Government was spot on in saying that it has discovered that although COVID has hit us, but it has also introduced a new opportunity in digitalization, where a lot of transactions now happen on the digital space. So government is now finding opportunity in there to generate revenue and also to create opportunity for the private sector, which I will say again, government was spot on. Government was equally sincere in telling us that, look, revenue has fallen by 11.9 billion. Whereas within the same period, 2020, we had expenditure going as high as 14 billion. The joy is that through prudent management of the economy, government was able to sustain all its flagship programs. What were these flagship programs? One, the free SHS program. Two, the school feeding program. Three, the NAPCO program. Okay? These are major interventions that government had to still sustain. The school, the nursing training allowances and the teacher training allowances that government introduced. These are intervention programs. In spite of COVID, government sustained them. So I am saying that all these things that government introduced, including the free water, the rebate given on electricity, brought some relief to us. One would think that, in COVID situation, government will say, hey, now let's tighten our belt. So I'm giving up on this. But government said, no, I would maintain these social intervention programs. It was maintained, they were maintained in 2020, and they have been maintained in 2021. And government has reassured us that in 2022, Ghanaians will continue to enjoy these social intervention programs. But like I said, government has now found a solution, which solution is a major boost for the young entrepreneur. Government has now identified some new dynamic ways of helping the Ghanaian youth. Instead of people being depressed and sitting at home, government has introduced the Youth Start program, where at the district level, if you are just a starter, you can have up to 10,000. If you have your small company, you need to expand, you can take up to 50,000. If you are a registered limited liability company with the necessary logistical support, and you want to still grow your business, you can take between 100 to 400,000. However, these are being channeled through the private financial institutions so that there can be proper tracking and monitoring. Government doesn't want to treat it as a handout. This would inculcate in our young youth that sense of commitment to their own business. You wouldn't have to go to the public sector to look for jobs. I was in the public sector. I left and set up my own business some 15, 18 years back. And I know how it benefited me. I finished law school and I was like, I wouldn't go and apply to work in government establishment as a lawyer, but I will be in private practice and set up my own law firm. At least for my law firm alone, we have some 7 lawyers who have been employed, who are paid. We have admin officer, we have an account officer, we have a cleaner, we have a messenger or a clerk. So at my little level, this is the job I've created for a chain of people. So the step taken by government through this Youth Start thing is highly commendable, because yes, the public sector is recruiting, you have the security services, you have other state institutions recruiting, but they can never be enough.
Okay, so you've gone into some of the details. However, we're still going to zero in on them. So I wanted to know the thoughts that were running through your head as the minister was speaking. Clearly, you've demonstrated it. But I identified that there were essentially about 7 thematic areas that everything that the finance minister said will revolve around. And I'll pick your thoughts on these thematic areas. The first, of course, being the introduction of the e-levy.
Well, a levy or a tax is money that government is taking from the citizenry. What is the purpose? I am at Road Fund. Contractors lament day in, day out. Guru boys are all over chasing contractors. Oh, I will take your certificate to somebody. Oh, you'll be paid, you'll be paid. And people are being defrauded here and there. We need, as a country, to have an innovative, sustainable way of generating revenue. The tolls, how much do they give us? We get about 70, 75 million a year. It's not even up to 80 million. How many roads can we use that amount for? But with this e-levy, this 1.7%, 5%, it's not up to 2%. Government considers so many factors. I'm sure the initial proposal was way above 1.75. But stakeholder concentration, stakeholder engagement led to that consensus figure of 1.75. If you really pay attention to comment in the media space, industry players are really not criticizing the 1.75. Okay? Because there was some consensus around it. Now, what are we going to use this fall to invest in the road sector and also in the private sector to support our young men
So
and
when you
women.
do the projection, how much is government expecting to raise annually from this?
Well,
levy?
I will be unable to give specific amount, but certainly, per what I'm hearing, government is going to rake in not less than 2 billion in a year, which will go a long way to help the road sector, which will go a long way to help by way of startup capital for young entrepreneurs who are going to go training. Look, without the private sector, this economy cannot grow. You realize that the planting for food and jobs helped us in terms of our primary produce. But we needed to move into the secondary stage of production, processing, adding value. That is why I am happy with this Youth Start thing, where Ghanaian youth with innovations, with ideas in processing, in production, can now tap into the gains in the planting for food and jobs. We planted, it created job opportunity for our farmers, it created job opportunity for young graduates and young Ghanaians who wanted to go into vegetable farming, get into other crops. But we can create more opportunities if we now look at processing. Because if you have your farm produce
Processing of the raw materials.
and you don't process,
Okay.
and you are looking at export, and the export opportunities are not there, the farmer will lose. So looking at processing, the manufacturing sector, the production sector, the secondary processing of our produce helps, because it will create its own value chain for the system. And once the value chain is created, everybody gets a bit of it. Well, the Youth Start program clearly is the signal.
And that is about, they are proposing about 10 billion Ghana cedis as the initial startup money.
That is correct. That is correct. And realize that government is now going to liaise with the financial sector, private financial institutions, the banks, to roll this out. So you need to have an account. So you need to go through training. See, in the past, I must admit, Ghanaians took for granted some of these opportunities. Many people had received support and perhaps did not care. Thought that, oh, it should be a handout. But today, what government is doing is that let us use the private banks to do this. Don't forget that the president, the minister also announced the taking off of the investment bank, the National Development Bank, to look at big corporates who want to have access to financing of their projects. Because many people have the ideas. Under one district, one factory, a lot of people have had the appetite to get something done. But they cannot sustain the commercial bank loans. I mean, they cannot meet it. They take the loan with the interest rates and the conditions and all that.
So just to come in, I've heard people say that usually when it comes to some of these things and access, it's always politicized, and that the government in power will always look for its own people and give this thing to. What is the plan to ensure that this is open to everybody?
Well, let me give you an example. Sometimes people are not sincere with some of the things they say. The Coronavirus Alleviation Program Business Support Scheme, government demonstrated optimum transparency in the disbursement, such that you only register with your telephone number and you get the money directly on your phone. How else could government have done this? It wasn't partisan. The government didn't say, oh, people should write names where you say, oh, I am from MPP, that's why I'm benefiting. Government opened up. And as much as 302,000 small businesses benefited. So as for me, when people talk about it's only MPP or that a program is being rolled out, so and it will go one way, I disagree with them. Yes, obviously, people who are desirous of doing business will take advantage. But let somebody say that, oh, I had a good proposal, I went in and I was denied because of my party color or my party affiliation, then we can take it up from there. But for people to, hypothetically make such allegations, I think we should not waste my time on it. What is important is that government is rolling out a policy for the private sector and Ghanaians are benefited from it. I think that's the main thing.
Okay, so government has these multiple flagship programs that are ongoing. Initially, when you were making your comments, you said that the government, in spite of the COVID-19 constraints and all that, managed to keep some of the flagship programs, in fact, maybe all of the flagship programs going forward. But realistically speaking, we have planting for food and jobs. You have one district, one factory, one village, one dam, the Agenda 111, and all of these flagship programs going. The government says that it is one of the seven thematic areas it's going to focus on. Realistically speaking, is it possible to maintain all these flagship programs concurrently, looking at the economic circumstances we find ourselves, or we are going to have to review and say that let's prioritize and get these ones ongoing while we wait for things to shaping up so we can continue with the others? Or you think that we can go on with all the multiple flagship programs as the government plans to do?
Discipline and prudence. Government can achieve this through discipline. If we manage to keep to expenditure and the areas of waste that we are cutting, if we prudently manage the resources that come in, why not? Because these are incentives, these are intervention programs to alleviate poverty, to cushion Ghanaians. So it's not really that it is going elsewhere. Removing this will make the Ghanaian worse off. Sustaining it would offer some relief. Look, as of 2016, Ghanaians were calling for a reduction in electricity tariffs, but they never got it. This government came in. Industry enjoyed up to 17%. Households enjoyed 17% reduction. Yes. Okay. Households enjoyed up to 32% reduction in electricity tariffs. And all because government felt that the situation we found ourselves, let us absorb some of these costs. Now, whilst we are absorbing some of the costs and providing you more social support, government feels that there are some areas that we can still contribute to make life better. That is why the levying is being introduced for the road sector and to the private sector. So the whole business of running an economy, you give and take. You bring it back and you take it. It's a management of it. All right? It's a whole art where, okay, you take it from here, place it at where it's a priority, take it back from another source, place it where, so that you create a balancing act, ensure some equilibrium. In all of these, be mindful of the net effect on the person. Negative effect, you mitigate it. So that is why government did not come up to say, I'm going to tax you 20% on your momo. Already the bankers, the telcos are charging 1%. All right? They are a private sector. They were charging. People were fine with it. They were not bringing that 1% to government. They were not using that 1% to construct your roads. They were not using that 1% to give it back to you to start your business as a concessionary rates, at a concession rate. This time, government is taking 1.75% to come and help you, to create opportunity for you, so that when you are going home and it's raining, you won't be thinking about flood. When you go and buy your car, you won't be too worried about the potholes. Look at Accra. All those middle class zones have asphalt. Government hasn't stopped in its road construction drive. Government 2 years in a row has announced a year of road construction and all that. But government has identified that the major thing is the contractor. Look, contractors employ the ordinary laborer. The contractor will employ a mason. The contractor will employ a carpenter. The contractor will employ a steel bender. The contractor will employ a driver and other artisans. So road construction in itself will bring all of these craftsmen on board. So if you are able to pay them regularly, they are able to plan. They are able to do quality work. And I think that should be the area government, Ghanaians should look at. That yes, as for opposition, they will come up with their fanciful talks. But ask yourself a question. Any serious government in waiting will criticize and proffer solutions or provide alternative. Any serious opposition would say, well, what you are doing is wrong. What you are doing is not helping, but I can do it this way to achieve results. So question, has NDC so far proposed any alternative? In the situation we find ourselves, they should put themselves in government shoes and tell us that, well, they have been there before. If we were in, this is what we're going to do. So far, follow all their communication. It's been like, go and criticize. The NDC has not spoken about the social intervention programs that we have sustained, we have maintained, and we are still doing. Remember that they prophesied that free SHS will not succeed, it will collapse. But it's ongoing. So you cannot expect them to be commending us, be applauding us, because we are in a political competition. But we know, and any objective watcher can conclude that yes, NPP government under Nana Akufo-Addo has navigated well. In the public sector, the waste, the red tape system, the bureaucracies that create problems for businesses would remain. But like government said, it has introduced this digitalization thing to cut down most of these wastes, all these things that frustrate people. With through computer, through ICT, we can make life better.
So I'm going to ask you about the digitization agenda, and we'll be wrapping up our conversation. But before I do that, let me ask that. Do you think we've come to a point in the life of this country where we need to have a frank conversation about the role that taxation plays in the development of the country? It looks like there is some prejudice about the issue about taxation. And you compare to our fellow middle-income countries, and it looks like their culture of taxation, comparing to our culture of taxation, there is a little bit of work that needs to be done here in our system. Is it a thought that you hold?
You see, we as a political class haven't helped matters because we play on this for opportunities. So that has been it. But to me, I agree that we must be frank about it and let the same populace know the benefits of taxation in their lives. If you go and borrow, it get to a point where your economy cannot go in that direction, and you have an IMF or World Bank coming to tell you that now manage it this way, do it this way, they will dictate policies to you. But if you tax, and you tax properly, and identify the proper tax to impose, and you spend that money for people to see the benefit thereof, trust me, you can always win an argument. Because now with the 1.75% levy, all the Ghanaians expect, in spite of the complaint, would be to see that works are going on in their various communities, and they are seeing an increasing pace in the way work is being done, that they are seeing contracted back to site. To me, that will be the game changer.
Okay, so people have also said that this is a levy, the e-levy. It's been introduced in 2022. Is there a likelihood that in 2023, when we are reading the budget, it could be taken off?
Well,
you anticipate that it will be kept for some time. There's the COVID levy.
Well, to me, we will need this e-levy for a long time, because people continue to develop through infrastructure, and they build their houses, and they would need access roads. We build schools, we build hospitals, we need the roads. We will need the roads till there's nothing like government. So, as for a means to get funds to sustain the maintenance, the expansion, it is necessary. It's a necessary evil. Very much so.
Okay, so quickly on this one, government says that advancing their digital agenda is going to be one of the things that is going to be focusing on. Some commentators have said that when on one breath you are looking to advance your digital agenda, and this is something the Vice President of the Republic, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, has been championing. But whilst you are looking to advance your digital activities, you are introducing some kind of a levy in the same sector, which is the digitalization, is essentially the
when you earn your income, and government is of the view that imposing a levy or a tax on a particular income will not be nuisance, and the purpose of it will be to deal with a critical sector of the economy, I think it's on point, and it's right to do so. Obviously, like I said, COVID affected a lot of businesses, but COVID also introduced a new opportunity in the digitalization space. So a lot of businesses are happening through the internet, online activities. So if at first somebody would just walk to the market and buy, today the person is sitting at home and somebody has an app. That app enables the person to shop for you and deliver at your doorstep. The person is using an app to make money, and government is, say, charging 1% or 1.75. Would somebody question that? We used to now go directly and give money to our relations or use that to pay. We go there, write check. Now today we show Momo is accepted. The transaction is charging you. But government sees that as an opportunity, okay? And is charging some 1.75% to develop your roads for you. To me, I think no matter how uncomfortable or unpalatable it may be seen, it's also necessary to give us as a people relief. And I think that should be the focus. What is it being used for? What is the purpose of this? So nobody should think that, government will drive people away from this digitalization space. That 1.75% won't drive people away. Because a lot of people are finding space in that digitalization economy. And that is the only space also that government can make it to help the people.
Perhaps the fact that that sector has grown up to about 500 billion worth of transactions taking place annually. That is why government is going in there to look for some money.
Well, it is necessary for the very people. I mean, if you see suddenly that area is growing big and others are shrinking, would you go to the area that is shrinking? No. You only tax where there's expansion. I mean, that is basic.
Okay, so we'll wrap up our conversation talking about private sector. And initially, I know you made comments about private sector. We've heard this, it's almost become a cliche that the private sector is the engine of growth. And government says that it's going to look to empower private sector to expand and create more jobs. So linked to it is the job creation agenda. But to find out from you, did you get a clear direction, a clear-cut policy of the Akufo-Addo government through the budget that was presented in terms of supporting the private sector?
Yeah, very clear. I mean, government was unequivocal and in simple language said that those desirous of benefiting from the U-Start will be trained. 2, funds will be channeled through the banks. The National Development Bank, which is to help the manufacturing sector, to help Ghanaian industries, which would also complement the efforts being made in the EXIM Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund and other areas, would be to help the Ghanaian industry. So this government, has been so clear on that. And by putting in the structures for takeoff in itself, should tell you that government is walking the talk. Because if government is not desirous of doing it, is not determined to achieve it, there's no way it would put in place the legislation. There's no way the government will put in place the infrastructure. There's no way government will put in place the structures. All right? So let us see as these things are rolled out. One good thing you must note is that for all the things that MPP spoke about in opposition, upon assumption of office, steps were taken to implement. When MPP was in opposition, it criticized and gave alternative. That yes, when we come, this is what we'll do. So you have a nursing training allowance, teacher training allowance. Government says, when we come, would restore. Electricity tariffs. That President Mahama said, look, I cannot reduce it. In fact, it would even have to go up to enable us to sustain that sector. NPP in opposition said, no, you can find other means of cushioning Ghanaians. You can find other means of sustaining it. So please reduce the tariff. We came into office and we did it. Free SHS since 2008. NDC consistently said it could not be implemented to the extent that they were saying it was a 419 policy. They were saying that, it must progress. You can't do it. You need to have infrastructure in place. You need to have this in place before. But what did we say? We said, no. Give access. Create the opportunity. Implement it. The numbers are there to testify that today many, many, many more Ghanaians are having access to secondary education. Many, many more Ghanaians are having access to university education. Look at the numbers that came out. Those first batch of free SHS graduates going to the universities, the numbers shot up. So it tells you that even in the past, parents who could not afford had their kids at home. Today, their children are having equal access. You know, when it was introduced, there were a lot of debates. Oh, why this, why that? Now it is stable. Even at a point where government had to introduce a shift system the green and the gold, track. People criticize, but government did that to manage the situation as we dealt with the issue of infrastructure. All right.
Yeah.
So, and if you look at the record, even within 4 years, government had constructed more schools, school blocks, expanded a lot of facilities in our schools than the NDC's 8 years. And you go to schools, you find out they have a library, assembly hall, new classroom block, dormitory, all over. They thought we could not do it. So, given the benefit of doubt, you can simply say and conclude that between NDC and MPP is not perfect. But MPP policies are far superior to the policies that the NDC has. In any event, all that they say, go back to 2016, what they said. They had virtually given up. They had locked in on ideas and they could not introduce anything new. And even in opposition, going into 8 years, they still don't have an alternative. If you ask them their job creation policy, they have none. They really have none. So I think that beyond the rhetorics, do, act, put something concrete in place. Let people measure your work and say that, okay, you said this, you have introduced it. The one district, one factory, government talked about it. Factories are coming up, old ones are being resuscitated. All you hear is that, oh, these are old things, they are just creating a new, giving them money. Yes, but even if it's an existing business and it is being expanded under 1D, 1F, don't forget that it's creating new opportunities. To me, these are the gains that people are not paying attention to. And these are the gains that the opposition would want to, rubbish. But in reality, people are benefiting. So, we are not in good times. COVID has ravaged. COVID has destroyed. COVID has broken our hearts. But government remains committed. Government is still resolute. Government remains determined that in spite of all of this, we're having a steady growth until this came in. We will still make it.
Okay.
And then cross the Red Sea.
We've been talking to the Deputy Majority Leader in Ghana's 8th Parliament, Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Markin. And he's been sharing his thoughts on Budget 2022, some very rich thoughts he shared with us. We want to thank you very much for joining us, Honorable, to sharing all
I
these
appreciate
thoughts.
it. It's a pleasure being on. As I say, I think your platform is very educative. It's helping a lot of people acquire knowledge. And I enjoy the frankness with which your programs are aired, and with, people are very objective. And when they come in there, I listen to your station, and I think you have a future. So far, so good. The sky will be the limit. Keep going. Because Ghanaians want credible platforms. Ghanaians want credible news. And the level of industry there is commendable. So, congratulations, as I say, you are doing well.
If you have more than 100...
Well, yes, you see, there you go. You have to be credible. And we hope to continue to be a credible source of information. I don't know what is coming up after that. There's some other WhatsApp video piece that's coming up immediately afterwards. We apologize for that. That's not what we're going to be talking about today. So you're excited. You spoke to this man, and how did you feel? Did you get the answers you were looking for when you spoke to him?
Well, some people say that the interview could have been longer. But
yes, of course it could have been longer. Could
have
been shorter as well.
Yes, Kojo, but there's something that's very important to me in this interview, and that is the fact that we cannot build our country with propaganda anymore.
Right.
Especially when it comes to the issue about taxation. And that's because government can only give as much as it has. If it doesn't have, it cannot give. So once we are making demands on government then we must be ready to know that government will also make demands of us. The people.
Wilberforce, we see you speak honestly, but this is something government has known for the last 25, 30, 40 years of its existence. Subsequent governments have done the same, messing around with Ghanaians and not telling them the truth, withholding certain basic facts from Ghanaians for political reasons and those kinds of things. So then we find this kind of situation coming today where all of a sudden it's like a shock. You're being taxed. It's like almost a surprise.
Well, it shouldn't be a surprise. But what I see, and I tried to get the thoughts of Mr. Markins in that interview, and that is the issue about the culture of taxation in Ghana. And I tried to make a reference to our sister countries who are considered to be middle income countries. So, for example, South Africa is considered to be one of them. I think Malaysia, Nanaya may be able to help me with the other middle income country, or
Singapore,
all those people.
All of them.
Yes, and if you look at the culture of taxation there, it appears that they embrace taxes with their two arms, and everybody runs to go and pay their taxes and to file their taxes.
The point is,
no matter how difficult.
There is no country in the world where that.
Nobody, you don't embrace it so much as it is done in such a way that also the benefit of your tax.
So what I'm trying to communicate is that when taxes are imposed, they are respected, they are accepted, they are paid.
Right.
So it's not like the country is taking its people for granted, but it's just that we tell you that when it comes to the issue about taxation, it is for purposes of development. And so if we are taxing, it's not because someone wants to put the money in their personal pockets, but the money is going to be doing A, B, C, D, and you are going to see it. Maybe that is where we are gradually having to go to as a people, so that everybody knows that whatever it is that is happening, when roads are being built, when hospitals are being built, and all those things, they are coming directly from taxes. Government is not getting money from any other source but for taxes. Apart from taxes, government has to go and borrow.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's two choices.
Yes.
Like you said at the beginning of this interview, you have two choices. It's either we're going to go and borrow, or we're going to go and tax. There's no other. Well, there's internally generated from other sources.
I don't know what Nana thinks about this, but I'm beginning to think that we need to have a whole national conversation about taxation. Maybe like we did recently on tax series, we should do one on taxation.
You should do. The whole thing of cometh the tax man is a difficult one because, for example, you've heard the responses to the budget. Kojo was asking, in a rather annoyed way, what's the point? Go back and talk to your people, return to your homesteads and wait for further instructions. But it's some of the responses that you heard. For example, a bunch of taxi drivers in Kumasi saying, "You've come and taken the road toll. What does the road toll mean to us? We don't even really use it. And yeah, business. And I'm telling you that the thing that really matters to us is fuel, the cost of fuel. And that's what we want from you." It's the curious thing of, what do you want in a budget? And if you don't get it, then you stamp your foot. And even, in fact, if you get what you asked for and then some small demand is made of you, why should you? Because, the government is Father Christmas, and the government should continue to find ways that are not borrowing, because then you'll get critical about debt levels, but find ways of finding money, because the government is rich and it can do it somehow. No, as you said, the money comes from somewhere. It's, bonds that are sold on the open market, foreign investors who do not do it because they're doing us some kind of moral service. They do it because they can make money out of us, because we pay them interest through the nose. We have the option of getting money from them. We have the option of going to some multilateral institutions. We still pay interest. It might be at relatively advantageous rates, but we still pay interest. There's next to nothing in the level of grants available, money that comes. And when you say grants, people make it sound as if there are no strings attached. Even some of the most wonderful work that is going on in the country at the moment with the help of grant interventions, for example, in the power sector. Do people seriously believe that this money is just handed to Ghana on a plate gratis? You know, very often those countries that are doing business with us and giving us money to improve, say, our utilities infrastructure, they will come with their own contractors. It's a way of keeping their own people employed. It's not just out of the milk of human kindness to us. It's a government department that has some money, and it's a way of passing back its money to some business in its own country that would otherwise be unemployed. So whichever way you see it, I'm not saying that we don't benefit out of these traditional ways of raising money. Let's say even more traditional than taxes, because debt is one of those things that will always be with us. And debt isn't necessarily a bad thing. Every country has debt. Some of the most successful countries in the world have unbelievable debts. I mean, I was reading about the scale of the appropriation budget just passed by the Nigerian Senate. You know, we're talking about trillions of naira here, regardless of the rate, the currency exchange rates at the moment. So, you know, we have to, particularly after the year we've had, where you said, for reasons of the COVID downturn, so many things that we're expecting in the way of revenues inflows didn't happen. 14 billion cedis worth. And because of COVID, so much that was additional expenditure that nobody could have planned for. No country in the world did. 12 billion worth has been incurred. That is just the basic business of balancing your budget. Then going forward, there's all these debts that are coming due that either have to be renegotiated or have to be paid back. The money has to come from somewhere. And if you want your roads and your health service, your vaccinations you were talking about earlier on in the program, then it has to come from our own efforts. It's within our own power. And hold the government to account. But it's, you know, it has to come from within us. It's not going to come
from the skies,
from a magical source or from somebody else, because other people are also scrabbling around abroad looking for money to fill their own fiscal deficits.
You know, Coach, I was just reading from the John F. Kennedy website, his presidential website. John F. Kennedy is the former president of the United States, and that his timeless statement that he made, I'm sure you know that very well. He says, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. I don't know whether in the 21st century, like this particular 21st century, he made this statement in the 20th century, I believe.
Yes.
I don't know whether it applies in the 21st century.
I think, of course, it's applicable every single time. But again, and this is where we started from this discussion. And the problem is successive governments in Ghana have made it. I've tried to avoid placing the burden for building this country where it should be placed. The burden for the growth, the development, and the funding is with the people. But when you try to avoid or you try to soften, I'm not talking about interventions during the COVID time, but just generally avoiding giving the people a pill that you know they have to take for political expediency, then it's the governments that have failed to serve their people properly. So I'm just hoping that this kind of, I wouldn't call it bravery, but simply saying, listen, take the pill now. You will benefit from it later. I hope that kind of bravery in governance is what we're going to be expecting going forward.
I can understand your point. And it's extremely important that if you are in authority, you don't take just popular decisions, but you take decisions that will benefit the people. You know, sometimes even as parents and senior brothers and senior sisters and all those kind of things, we have had to take some decisions within our family setting just for the good of the family. Sometimes it wouldn't go down well with certain people that the decision may be going against, but the decisions are still taken anyway.
Right.
And long term, we realize that these decisions that we made have actually helped those we took the decisions about and not hurt them like they would have suffered if we didn't take those decisions. So governance is some way. And, you know, the political space is such that we ended election 2020 just a few months ago, 11 months ago, and already in our country, we are already talking about election 2024. Everything that is being done is being referred to election 2024. And so it looks like if you are in power, you are always thinking about winning the next election. And sometimes it has the ability to affect your
Divert your
decision making
attention, yeah.
and to divert your attention. But this budget that has been delivered, 2022 budget, is showing some signs that, look,
Signs of life.
yes, we have to take the bull by the horn and get things done.
Is the government, can any government, doesn't really matter about this one, is any government that's here, and I'm talking now about the quality of the people, do they have it within them to make sure that when you're taking these kinds of revenue, we're talking about generating 2 billion, at a very rough guesstimate from this kind of levy.
It will be higher, yes.
depending. Even if we get to a certain point, so let's say 2 billion of internally generated revenue that's coming in somehow. I'm now talking about the capacity of governments to use this money properly. Listen, one of the biggest challenges is being the leakages, the corners that are not properly blocked, where money is just, it's getting lost in the system due to mismanagement. Now, so whilst we're getting this new source of revenue, do we have what it takes to ensure that the money is going to be applied appropriately as is being dreamt about for job creation, infrastructure, and things like that?
So, Kojo, we will answer this question by taking a look at some of the things that have happened that perhaps the last 5 years. And that is that we are told by the financial experts that when the Kufuor government came into office, there were certain outstanding debts. I think they call it legacy debts and all that. And the evidence is that some of these legacy debts have been paid, some of them to contractors, some of them to even about the NHIA, the National Health Insurance scheme and all that. Right. So there's been some evidence to show that some of the economic management decisions that have been taken by the current economic management team has been prudent. There's evidence to show that. And the evidence is in the fact that certain debts have been paid, certain statutory payments that were being made previously are now being made. And there appears to be some frank management of the economy until COVID-19 came in, when we had to do some excess spending that were not budgeted for. I remember when the finance minister went to parliament with a supplementary budget in 2020, you could tell that the man has been hit, because in 2019, November, when he was presenting the budget, he didn't anticipate that there will be COVID-19.
No, I am buoyant.
Yeah, you know, and he was clear in his mind the direction that 2020 was going. And again, it was an election year. So we cannot, some of these things, we cannot run away from it. It needs to be explained. Sometimes people rationalize it away, but it is the reality. And that the reality is that COVID-19 hit us, and it hit everybody else. In fact, some people, as of today, are still struggling with COVID-19. Not so far away from us, maybe a little far, but Austria. They have decided to lock down again.
Right.
You know,
and even those people who have been vaccinated are locked down for 20 days.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
you know, so
I think the counter argument is that there are, particularly amongst our near neighbours in West Africa, there are other countries that at least do not have the debt overhang that we do. So they're seen to have been more prudent, to have borrowed less enthusiastically than we did when times were good.
And the question that would be asked is, what is their infrastructure situation looking like? How much infrastructure do they have?
Well,
are they anywhere near where Ghana is in terms of the build of roads, hospitals, and those things? So you've got to ask that question.
I would be interested to see a like-to-like comparison between
the kind of service that
the infrastructure provision between Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana.
And the kind of service that we offered our sick people in terms of COVID-19.
So there are people who would say that maybe our COVID-19 approach again was misjudged, and that we shouldn't have locked the country down. You know, the traders in Elubo and Aflau who will tell you.
We shouldn't have done NABCO.
We shouldn't have done NABCO.
We shouldn't have done any interventions.
We shouldn't have paid for food for people who had no way of making money otherwise, or feeding themselves otherwise. That we've been wasteful with our public expenditure, and I mean, this is where again the accountability of government and digitization can play an important role. And one shouldn't accept it. It's just some information thrown at you and you just accept it as it is. Yes, it's right that we should question. But when a government sort of preempts the question, as it were, by setting up something like a delivery tracker. I'd be very interested to know how many people consult that delivery tracker, how often it's updated, how accurate it is. We had some problems initially when it was
that was
first
it,
launched,
Randy,
and then it's just disappeared. It's supposed to be an ongoing resource. Freedom of information is supposed to be an ongoing resource. Use the tools to hold the government to account so that you know your taxes have been paid. If a common platform is set for collecting property rates, which most people don't even know exist, never mind have a mind to pay. If it's set up and suddenly you find yourself paying an extra toll each year, the argument being that local government needs that money to do things like road repairs, street lights, and so on, well, then when you've paid your money, go and hold your local government to account. That's what democracy is about. It's not like you just pay it and you sit there and you're completely passive. Be an active citizen and make sure that the money is being spent as it should. But, there was some thinking about this at the start of COVID, about how strong leaders in the COVID era were going to go through this arc of people really appreciated the strong leadership when the crisis hit and nobody knew where this was coming from, where this disease was going, and everybody was taking it a lot more seriously. We have now relaxed and reverted to type, where we can snipe at everything with no sense of responsibility on our own behalf. And it won't wash any longer because we need to continue doing the work of building around us that means that your teenager who is about to leave school has a realistic prospect of employment. It takes money to create the opportunities, so the money has to be found. Let's all contribute towards it. As I said, it's 1.7%.
Finish your point.
A 1.75% levy. A 1.75% levy compared to the description of our dear Facebook friend talking about 22% taxes in Finland. A beautiful cold country. Take your pick. It's quite simple. Or you can live in a lawless state and hope that, I don't know, you find some alternatives.
You guys, you talked around the point I was asking, and I'm still nobody's giving me. I need guarantees. You're talking about making sure that we follow up, be responsible as citizens. Media. I'm going to ask this. I'm sorry. I always want to challenge the media because the media doing enough. You talked about the tracker, delivery tracker. It's there. You're supposed to be able to go to it and say, government has not delivered on this thing. Now that they're talking about these new taxes, which are supposed to be getting out this volume of internally generated revenue that they're supposed to be using specifically for infrastructure and for improving service delivery in various areas. What is it that you're expecting? Say, for example, media. What have they got to do to make the government, accountable? Again, it's the same thing I have a problem with. It is the loopholes, the areas where the money is getting lost, and the governments successfully complain about money is going not missing. It's just not being accounted for properly.
So Kojo, to answer the question about media participation in the process, in this democratic process, that participation cannot be overemphasized. Government gives, government receives. There's a scripture in the Bible, Acts chapter 20, verse 35, that says that it is more blessed to give than to receive. But there are two things there. It only says that it is more blessed to give than to receive. What it means is that both of them are blessed, but one is more blessed than the other. And the one that is more blessed is the giving. So in the media discourse, we tend to focus on we don't focus on the givings of government. We always focus on the receivings of government, the things that government wants to get from the people. But the government also gives. And we've not spoken so much about the 10 billion Ghana cedis that has been earmarked for entrepreneurship,
right,
and the availability of capital for people who are already in business and those who want to get into business.
The whole you
start.
You start.
And that's because that is government giving, and we think it's okay. But our focus has been on the ones that government wants to receive in order to
Accountability.
be able to give.
Right.
So it's more like if government is giving to the people, no need to account. But if government is receiving from the people, then we need to account. But really, the government gives only what it has received.
Right.
It cannot do anything beyond that. Right. So as a media, we need to concentrate on both sides, both how to get government to receive and how government gives. If we don't focus on both, then we're creating problems, because then we are kicking on the ability of government to receive and thereby making it impossible for government to give. While we are talking about e-levy, let's also talk about the other things that is in this
E-levy
budget.
is supposed to be
using
funding.
Exactly. Other than that,
If it works, then we're able to do these things.
we make it look like the finance minister is sitting at the exchequer with maybe it's a big hole,
Stuffing
and
his
he's
pockets.
stuffing his pocket. So he's just saying that, bring it, come and put it here, and on that's the picture that is painted. But I don't see that. I don't see that. So the media has a duty to make sure that we are doing this both ways.
Right. Okay. Nana.
Yes, the media also have a duty to look very critically at the terms of engagement and not to take the surface argument as well. And this is where the critical friend becomes important. It's not with a paranoid idea that the government is out to cheat you, but look carefully at what is being presented to you. For example, somebody who is very well versed in these matters, an economist and a banker, was saying to me over the weekend, the estimates of what can be collected through the e-levy have been vastly overstated, because there are other African countries that have tried similar measures in the past. In fact, a previous NDC government introduced a not so dissimilar levy and had to abandon it quite quickly. The case of Kenya is perhaps slightly overstated. They introduced one form of an electronic transactions tax, found it didn't work particularly well, introducing it as a service tax, so went away, rethought the legislation, and reintroduced it at the top end of this year. And according to which account you believe, it is either working moderately well or it is working quite successfully. You do have to bear in mind the unintended consequences of some of these demands for this, the one that everyone's concentrating on, the
Which is the e-levy, yeah.
As people have been said, you may end up with even unintended security consequences. You may end up with an unexpected bonanza for the banks. And suddenly start doing more. And you know that then how does the government make sure that it is tapping into that business that is going on in the banks? But that is not to say that after examining the terms critically, you insist that it is a lie, because you find that perhaps the estimations that are presented don't quite match up with what you think the levy can actually
achieve.
Somebody is suggesting that if we think we can bring in, say, 5 billion cedis from the e-levy, what you have to do is estimate starting on the basis of 10% of that, because there will be such fall off in Momo trade, in the sheer anger of people at having, the idea of having to pay this tax, that you can expect Momo transactions to fall to that level. I keep on saying, having experienced the convenience of Momo, having to deal with everywhere from Kukumlimli to Dumase, Sunyane, that being able to carry out transactions using a mobile phone is of a kind of convenience that most people are not going to be able to relinquish it altogether.
At all. I cannot.
But some people.
If there's a fall off, you're going to be perhaps more selective, and not be doing it by heart.
No, so just like
came-
without even thinking, because everything is But remember, before it became, we got the complete interoperability.
Right.
Remember, if you were exchanging money between networks, I remember how that used to pinch me every time I had to
had to
transfer
pay.
from my
Right.
Vodafone, Vodacash wallet to MTN, because everybody has MTN, so it's like you're forced to use it. But suddenly that disappeared. Well, remember what it was like before. So it's not anything that people haven't experienced.
This
It's
is
a
just-
variant of the same thing.
And so, as far as we're concerned, the media must do its job.
Yes.
They take both sides of the coin and then give a fair representation, but also explain that the money that's coming in is to do something.
But could you? I have one other point,
Right.
which has to do with the politics of our economy. The political part is the fact that when you go to parliament, there's always going to be two sides. There cannot be one side. Particularly this parliament, this 8th parliament, where the two sides are almost the same. In
Has
terms
it ever
of
been
number.
any differently? No, tell me that there was another time where Parliament was united behind the
Well,
budget.
but you see, when the numbers are different, the last parliament,
Right.
the numbers were very different. MPP was in the range of 169, and the NDC was
easily in the majority.
yes.
That's what you want.
You get it, yes. So what the reason why I'm making this is that one side of the house will say that they disagree with the budget, particularly the proposals being made for levies to be charged on electronic transactions. But we cannot leave it there just at the fact that you disagree. You have to explain to everybody why you disagree based on the circumstances that we find ourselves as a country. So that if you were the one who were in office, what would you have done differently
Right.
in the circumstances that we find ourselves? These are things that we need to ask those who say they disagree, because everybody can disagree. In fact, Kojo, I disagree with the fact that you are wearing a black suit.
In fact, I disagree. Me, myself, I
Yes.
disagree.
I disagree the fact that you are wearing a black nose mask. You should have worn a white one.
I get you.
And I disagree that Nanaya is wearing a spectacle that has orange on
the
it.
trimmings on
I
it.
disagree with that too.
Me too, I
Yeah.
agree.
So we all disagree with something, but we cannot just leave it there and say that because I disagree, that is what should prevail.
Okay. But the opposition is obliged to do only one thing. Sometimes to just point out where there may be problems with what they see. They don't have to give you an alternative. They just have to show you where there may be shortfalls in what has been presented so far. And then, hey, you take it from there. But they're going to their retreat, isn't it? What they call it, their retreat. One hopes that the retreat, they'll actually talk about these things and get a better explanation, fuller understanding of some of the particulars, the nitty-gritties of the budget. In general, the only thing that they've ever agreed on without ever questioning has been their own share of the budget. And even that one, this time around, they're looking for more. Can you imagine?
They're actually saying that we should give them 2% of all the revenue we are collecting.
Just like that.
And if you are asking for 2% of revenue collected, even if we agree that we're going to give it to you, it must be collected.
I laugh.
Yes, if we don't collect it, we can't give it to you. So if you say you disagree with the collection, automatically you are saying that
You disagree
you,
with
you
the
disagree with yourself and your own proposal that you have made that you want 2%.
Right, okay.
I think that this business of holding the state to ransom is one.
Become very popular, hasn't it?
It's extremely popular, and it really is one of the much less attractive features of political life in this country. The residents of Dalung in Kumbungu demonstrating about the state of their road. I appreciate their road must be in a terrible state. But, the argument is this is the money that we are putting into the district assemblies common fund by way of, tolls that we're paying. Therefore, come and do our road. Yes, there should be some correlation between the fact that you feel like you're a law-abiding person and you've invested in the state and therefore receiving services. But what has been the process of consultation between them and their elected representatives about what the state of of players with planning for road improvements in their area, I'd have thought that that would be the first port of call. But it becomes, no, give me this, or I won't vote for you. Give me this, or I'm going to get very angry and go out and shout.
Burn some tires.
And that has become the logic, not just in Ghana, in many African countries, the logic of the political process. It is not tenable. It's like an arms race. You cannot win.
That comes down to, unfortunately, for me, from what I look, the politicians themselves and the way they themselves have approached the way they do their politics that makes the citizen feel that that's the only way they'll get anything is by threatening mayhem, you know, because the citizens, the politicians themselves, either they're weak or they promise too much. And they're not honest with the people they represent and say, yes, we're taking it back.
But the approach of the politicians, if it is give me this or nothing else, then that is the kind of culture that we are putting up for everybody else, because our elected officials go to government, and the government here being the executive, and then another arm of government, which is the legislature, goes to the executive and says, give us this, and we are not ready to negotiate. So if you don't give it to us, yeah. So then everybody else, because these are our elected representatives, so they are going to the government and saying, I want this and nothing else. Then everybody else will say that they also want.
Now, I want to make sure that people get it. Members of Parliament, members of Parliament will say, well, if you don't give us this, then I'm going to burn tires. And you call yourself a member of Parliament.
But you see, I wonder if members of Parliament in effect are doing that because that's the language they also hear from their constituents. You know, you saying about, well, if you're a strong political leader, you don't let that be done to you. I was thinking of, say, the Nigerian Delta situation, where in effect you tell an oil company, give us this money, or I'll come and kidnap your workers, possibly kill them, and I'll blow up your oil pipelines.
Yes, but that came after what? After many years of.
But does it justify it?
Of course, never.
So, you know.
So we come back to the John F. Kennedy statement.
Ask not.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Amen. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. And on that note, we're going to say bye-bye. Thanks very much for coming in to discuss this. Ask not what you can do for your country. We have to be taught. It's like everything else. If it's the habit has been groomed, not beaten into us, but gradually inculcated into our spirit through education, through through example, then maybe the question becomes not just it's not said in a vacuum. It actually means something. Ghana, are we there yet? That's a question. Are we there yet? Are we nationalists?
I think
patriots?
What was the finance minister's way of putting it? It's an investment in the common good. Sorry, I wish I could find this out because I can then read to you in my very bad.
I need time for
in my extraordinarily bad tree what he said. That it was the idea that the thing that you're looking at is beautiful, but it comes in kwanchena diesefe nanso yede sikaneye.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, that is, so you want the better schools,
right?
You want the better roads, you want law and order on your streets, but all those things come with a price tag attached, and yes, they are worth buying. They're worth buying as a common investment. It's an investment we all make. We're one people. We all rise together, or we all sink together. Because if those public services do not work, and this is where I think actually more problematic than the argument of the taxi drivers is the resistance that you will get from middle classes, say lawyers who have never paid direct taxes in their lives and do not intend to, architects and doctors who don't want to. You cannot create a bubble for yourself. Never kid yourself that you can create a bubble for yourself. There will come a point where you will need the public services. So it is worth investing in the public services.
Honesty.
Regardless of whether you use them directly, immediately or not. You invest in them knowing that one day you may have to call on them or somebody near and dear to you will have to do too. And therefore it's an investment worth making.
Yo.
I wish the way I was living could stop serving rocks, knowing the cops is hot when I'm on the block. And I wish my brother would have made bail so I won't have to travel 6 hours to see him in jail. And I wish that my grandmother wasn't sick or that we would just come up on some stacks and hit a lick. And
I'm hopeless for today. Yes, what do you want to say?
ExpressPay is creating priceless experiences through instant payments across multiple channels. So download ExpressPay on the Play Store or App Store to join the ExpressPay family now.
Hopeless and we'll make our way.
overseas come home and we will
I know it ain't easy, but I'm hopeless.
pray. All we gotta pay instead of thinking about who gon' die today. The Lord is gonna help you feel better. You ain't gotta cry today. Sit at the light so long, and then we gotta move straight.